Wondered whether the subdued man with the unfamiliar glasses, reading listlessly from a lined pad, was actually Saddam or a double. Tonight, some analysts believe this is Saddam, but think the message may have been taped before the first air raid. So the question remains, is Saddam dead or alive? As U.S.-led forces under the cover of artillery barrages make their way toward Baghdad and provincial cities, propaganda leaflets explaining to the Iraqis how to surrender are being printed and airdropped by the millions. If the Iraqis do make a stand, it is likely, military strategists think, that it will happen in Baghdad, the sprawling city of 5 million people, an ancient capital enshrouded tonight in smoke and paralyzed by a fear it's hard to imagine.
And good morning to all of you. It is 3 a.m. in the east. It is midnight, just past Pacific time. You're looking at a live picture being provided to us by the camera traveling with NBC's David Bloom. David is traveling with the 3rd Infantry Division. As you can well see, they are on the move. We can tell you they are in southern Iraq at this point, having been on the move for the better part of the last 14 hours or so. David Bloom was telling us earlier, as he spoke with us in our last hour, before being taken on the road, that their mission was successful. He was along with the troops that had gone in, those Marines, to secure the route through which the remainder of the 3rd Infantry Division would follow behind David and those Marines. What they had to do, literally, was, in David's words, not to be glib, he said, but they had to take out Iraqi posts there, of which there were anywhere from 10 to 30 or so Iraqi military units there in those posts. They were completely wiped out, destroyed. You can take from that what that would mean. They had to do that in order to keep those posts from reporting back to Baghdad or for their military operations central command that indeed the United States and coalition forces had passed through that way. They did encounter some mines that needed to be removed along the way as well. Again, this is with the 3rd Infantry Division, all Marines, as they have been progressing northwards towards Basra, we believe, but that is a very vast expanse of desert. They could be in any specific sort of geographical line from Kuwait up to Basra. We do not want to give away any sort of military information that might compromise the safety of the U.S.-led coalition and those troops, as well as our NBC News reporters. Once again, you're looking at live pictures coming into us. Imagine the technology now that we have to do this for you. These pictures being taken from the grouping within the 3rd Infantry Division. It is a mechanized unit. They have about 20,000 troops, I believe David reported earlier, that are traveling with him. There, we've just lost that picture, but remarkable pictures coming into us live as members of the 3rd Infantry Division head north toward Iraq. Welcome back, everybody. As we said, I'm Alex Witt. Let's get you caught up with all the headlines as we are doing every quarter hour here round the clock in our coverage of Target Iraq for you. Here we go. Intelligence officials telling the BBC News that the oil fields in Kirkuk, they are the busiest oil fields in Iraq, by the way, they may have been secured by U.S. forces now. Also, a British military spokesman is saying the southern Iraqi border port of Qasr, it is still in Iraqi hands. And responding to the heightened fears of terrorism related to the war in Iraq, the FBI now has begun questioning Iraqi-born individuals living here in the United States. About 11,000 Iraqis are going to be interviewed. The FBI and the U.S. Immigration, they're also seeking out specific Iraqis. They're all living unlawfully in the United States, and the United States has technically lost contact with them at this point. The White House says over 40 nations representing every continent on the planet, they are supporting the American war on Iraq. Turkey now has granted the United States military permission to use its airspace during operations in Iraq. Also, the South Korean government has endorsed a plan to send up to 700 non-combat troops to assist the U.S.-led war on Iraq. We're going to recap these headlines for you on the Iraqi crisis every 15 minutes right here on MSNBC. You can also get the very latest anytime on the web. To do that, go to iraq.msnbc.com for the complete coverage. We now go to the north, where explosions have been heard in the cities of Mosul and Kirkuk. Also, we've told you, the BBC reporting that U.S. Special Forces may have secured those oil fields in Kirkuk. NBC's Fred Francis, he is standing by somewhere there in northern Iraq. We will not divulge the specifics of his location for security reasons. But Fred, can you hear me? It's good to see you there. What's the latest from there?
Well, good morning, Alex. I hear you well. We're hearing in both the cities of Mosul, the second largest city in Iraq, well to the north, several U.S. airstrikes there this morning, and we are hearing reports, one the BBC report, another report, that there has been some fighting in the city of Kirkuk. The oil fields, the best producing oil fields, they put out 1 million barrels a day, obviously a high priority target going into this conflict. But since the overall operational plan was sort of turned on its side and pieces going in different routes, Kirkuk was not hit immediately, and we know that cruise missiles hit a Republican Guard division, the Nebuchadnezzar division, the only Republican Guard division of 6 left in the north. Cruise missiles hit that division yesterday, other strikes on that division, and we know that the Kirkuk oil fields, vast fields, were a target of U.S. Special Forces, specifically U.S. Rangers. Whether they have secured that field has not been confirmed by the Pentagon or CENTCOM Command, down in Doha. But we have people out there, and we'll try to confirm that for you later on in the morning. The importance of Mosul, obviously, psychologically important. It seems that the Baghdad regime has given up Mosul. 2 weeks ago, the Republican Guard division that was in Mosul, the Adnan division, was pulled south to Crete and towards Baghdad. Mosul, an enormously large city, considered an Arab/Kurd city, has 3 Iraqi divisions left in that city, and they are not good divisions. The airstrikes that were heard before dawn and just after dawn this morning in Mosul, we believe were on division headquarters of those 3 Iraqi divisions, and on political headquarters, the Ba'ath Party headquarters. Those were key targets on the list. Take out the political structure. And Alex, we do not believe, based on the defectors we have talked to, and we interviewed a defector from one of those divisions in Mosul, we do not believe that those Iraqi divisions will fight. So Mosul is up for the taking, and right now there are just no forces to take it. Frankly, that was the key target of the Northern Front, that in Kirkuk. And the American tanks were to come out of the 4th Infantry Division out of Turkey to take Mosul. But now that there is no Iraqi Republican Guard division in Mosul, and only 3 very weak divisions, that city should fall whenever the United States Command or the British Command decide that it should fall. It shouldn't take too long.
Fred, I want to have
Alex?
you stand by for a moment. Fred, we are getting some tape just coming into us. We've not had a chance to view this, so all of you are seeing this as we are for the first time on television. You're looking at Iraqi surrenders right now. As you can see, there, as a man has been approached, and he is being patted down to see if he might carry any sort of armor on him, any gear, any sort of weapons and the like. But we are being told that there are now Iraqi surrenders happening as the U.S.-led coalition forces, the coalition of the willing, encounters them along the way. Of course, you have also heard that we had 17 Iraqi troops having surrendered earlier. There is also the rumor going around, and I must stress a rumor, that the 11th Division of the Iraqi forces down in the southern part of Iraq may be surrendering. This is something that we have gotten from reports, various reports from reporters in the area, including NBC's David Bloom. He had heard that information. However, Central Command has not confirmed that information. Once again, that video you were just seeing is evidence of troops surrendering right now. There you see a number of them. Of course, we've reported 17 earlier. The numbers here look right there. If you see the line stretching, it could be more than 17 coming in. We do not know exactly where this surrendering is taking place, but as you can see, they have all put their hands on top of their heads to make sure they're not able to reach for any sort of armor, any sort of equipment they might have on them. They are surrendering, obviously, in the face of the vast U.S.-led coalition that is coming into the region, perhaps having been daunted by the air power and now foot soldier power we see in the region. Let's also get back to you, NBC's Fred Francis, and bring you in on this. You talked about the Republican Guard division no longer being there in the region of Mosul. When were they removed from there, Fred? And were they removed by force at all, or did they get out to save their own skins? Do you know the background?
No. Yes, I do. Let me just explain what you're seeing right now. These are regular troops in the South. These are not Republican Guard troops surrendering. And one of the reasons they're surrendering like this in the South is the same reason the U.S. forces believe they'll surrender around Mosul. The Republican Guard division in the South, they call the Baghdad division, was also removed from the South and brought up to protect Baghdad. So the 11th division down there and 2 other divisions in the South, they're not very motivated to fight since all the big tanks were pulled out. The same in the north. The Adnan division was pulled out 2 full weeks ago, a strong fighting unit, one of 6 Republican Guard divisions, and the troops up there have been, before the war, last week, were asking Kurdish forces to surrender. At one point last week, some Kurdish machine gun guys fired off their weapons, and a whole squad of Iraqi soldiers came down from the hill with their white flags and had to be sent back. The Kurds say, "We're not ready for you now, please go back." And of course the Kurds aren't supposed to be taking part in this fight, but there are 50 to 70,000 Kurdish forces in this area allied with the United States. They have not been put into action yet, so we don't have the kind of surrenders you're seeing here. As far as that 11th division down in the South, again, that's the toughest division the 3rd U.S. Army 3rd Infantry Division will go against if they fight. And so far, we've seen from David Bloom that that division has moved up far enough into Iraq that they should have made contact with the Iraqi 11th Infantry Division. So, you know, it's a supposition on my part, but if the Iraqi Infantry Division was going to fight, they would be doing it right now. They would be moving right now, and they haven't done that. That's a very good sign. This thing is moving very fast, considering this plan was turned on its side, and pieces of it had to be advanced, and we haven't really seen the full force and fury of what we expect to see in the coming days. Alex?
It's interesting you bring up the point there, going back to NBC's David Bloom, Fred. I asked him just in the last hour about that, about if he expected to encounter members there of the Iraqi 11th Division there in the southern part of Iraq as they were reportedly moving south. He said, "We're not quite sure. We may," but he didn't want to elaborate on that for fear of giving away any kind of his location there. So
Sure.
You hit the nail on the head. It may well be that they are going to be encountering them. Whether they are surrendering or not, we're not 100% sure at this point. Of course, that would be a devastating blow to the Iraqi regime and their military efforts. I do want to thank you so much, NBC's Fred Francis there in northern Iraq. Thank you so much. We'll check in with you again as well. Stay safe, Fred. Now let's go to Central Command and the very latest on the Marine helicopter crash, also the situation there in the Iraqi city of Basra. NBC's David Schuster, he is live at CENTCOM and Gutter with all of that. Good morning once again to you, David. What is the latest?
Well, Alex, the latest is a slight alteration in the number killed on that chopper. A British military spokesman now saying that there were 8 British Marines, Marine commandos that were killed on that chopper. Previously, the Pentagon had said that there were 12. The British saying they only had 8 on board. And the Pentagon and U.S. Central Command sticking with the figure 4 U.S. Marines, essentially the crew of this CH-46E Sea Knight. Apparently what happened is the crew was returning from a mission over southern Iraq. It had crossed into Kuwaiti airspace, crossed the Kuwaiti border, was about 8 or 9 miles south of the border, when apparently, according to military officials, they ran into what is being described as some weather problems. It's worth noting that this helicopter has 2 rotors on it, and it tends to kick up a lot of dust and debris. And given that this was at 3 in the morning local time, the pilot was likely using night vision goggles to conduct his sort of navigation, which makes it even more difficult to sort of see and sometimes can impair your judgment. And so when you combine that with a lot of dust kicking up, the suspicion is that perhaps that is what contributed to the crash. But again, they've just arrived on the scene in northern Kuwait within about the last 2 hours. And at this point, they're still trying to determine exactly what happened. As far as Basra is concerned, and just so you know, I've lost IFB. As far as Basra is concerned, that military officials are suggesting that coalition forces have taken control of a key peninsula called the Al-Far Peninsula. In addition, coalition forces have apparently taken control of the one main pipeline and pumping station that Saddam had as far as pumping oil and distributing it into the Persian Gulf. So by coalition forces taking control, not only did they avert a potential environmental disaster, but they have also taken control of the main way that Saddam Hussein might have been able to export oil or get oil from his country into the Persian Gulf. And of course, that equipment will be very valuable to the coalition once, in fact, this war is over, and they try to use some of this oil as far as continuing the oil for food program or to help essentially pay for Iraq's recovery. But that is the latest from U.S. Central Command. In just a couple of minutes, Alex, we are going to be hearing from the British spokesperson here at Central Command. His American counterpart we have not seen from or really heard from, but we'll be talking to the British spokesperson right here on MSNBC in about the next 5 or 10 minutes. Alex?
All right, NBC's David Schuster there at CENTCOM in Doha, Qatar. I will not ask him questions. As you heard from him, everybody, he has lost his ability to speak back and forth with me. I'm going to elaborate a little bit on what he was talking about there in Basra, though. We're being told by Reuters that the border port of Qasr, I believe I'm saying that correctly, it is still in Iraqi hands. This information coming into us from British military spokesman. Also, U.S. Marines, however, are on the move, this to take the very main road that leads into Basra right now. All of this under the broader context, as we reported earlier, it is believed that the Al-Far Peninsula has been taken control of for the most part. David was articulating why Basra is such a key city. We'll get into more of that with our MSNBC military analyst in our war room shortly. However, right now it is 1/4 past the hour, 3:15 precisely here on the East Coast, 12:15 in the morning on the West Coast. I'm Alex Witt. Let's get you caught up on the very latest headlines. In Operation Iraqi Freedom, British troops storm and take control of the Al-Far Peninsula at the head of the Persian Gulf. Officials are saying scores of Iraqi soldiers have surrendered. There is video right now of those surrenders. We've just brought that into you with a quick turnaround. First time we're getting a look at this video as well. U.S. military rescue and investigations team now on the scene of that downed CH-46 helicopter. It's like the one you're about to see here. That Marine helicopter was carrying 4 Americans, 8 Britons. We are being told there are no survivors. Officials are saying, however, hostile fire was not involved in that crash. U.S. officials are saying intelligence strongly indicates that Saddam Hussein was inside the bunker. He was possibly injured when that bunker was hit on Wednesday night. The Washington Post is reporting that U.S. officials knew that Saddam was making taped statements, all of this in anticipation of Wednesday's deadline. We will be recapping the latest headlines on the Iraqi crisis for you every 15 minutes right here on MSNBC. You can also get the very latest anytime on the web. To do that, go to iraq.msnbc.com for complete coverage. Let's go right now to Paul Nasser. He is standing by for us with the very latest. He is a producer traveling, I believe, with NBC's David Bloom. They are with the 3rd Infantry Division. However, we will not ask you, Paul, what direction you are going in nor where you are heading. But can you tell us what is the latest from there, Paul?
Well, Alex, what I can tell you is that the unit that we are with was ordered to spend overnight overnight without moving, and then early this morning the order came for us to move, and we are currently in a convoy on the move, made up of all sorts of vehicles that make up part of the 3rd Infantry Division. Be they tanks and Bradleys and regular vehicles and M88 vehicles that help take tanks out of ditches should they get stuck. We are on a bumpy road, a very dusty road. The visibility is very poor because of the dust. But this is part of the 3rd ID that has started and that is on the move right now as of this morning.
Paul, your mission to this point has been to literally clear the way for the members of the 3rd Infantry Division who follow you, has it not?
Well, the 3rd ID consists of 20,000 men, and a lot of troops have specific orders to do various orders. Some of them are there to support others through refueling and supplying of food and water. Others are supposed to clear the way ahead for any other infantrymen that might be with them. So it depends on which part of the 3rd Infantry Division that we're talking about. This is, after all, the infantry division that has been in Kuwait the longest, something like approaching 6 months. And they have been training time and again for exactly what has happened in the last 24 hours, essentially the conflict with Iraq.
Paul, give us the conditions there in terms of weather, the kind of gear that you're forced to be wearing right now. Have you had to put on those very heavy, those charcoal-laden suits that protect from any sort of incoming bio or chemical weapons so far?
I don't know if you heard about yesterday's chemical attack threat, whereby we were ordered to go from level 0 to MOP 4, which is the full chemical gear, which requires you to not only put on the core suits that you mentioned there, but also to put on the gas masks, the overboots, the gloves, and essentially cover yourself completely. And it was a hot day yesterday, and for 20 minutes we were boiling under these suits before we got the all clear. My understanding is that the troops today are not at that level of protection. They are at Chem at MOP 1, which means that they've got the suits on, they've got their gas masks handy, but they're not wearing those gas masks. Nor are they wearing the over boots or the gloves.
Mm-hmm. Paul, give me a sense of how well those troops are able to operate when they are having to wear that kind of material. And is it very hot in the desert right now? Do you have an idea what the temperature is?
Well, the temperature varies greatly depending on time of day. The sun is very, very harsh here, and the temperatures get to about 90 degrees and above during the daytime, and they drop pretty drastically at night. So very hot days are followed by very cold nights. We've had a series of sandstorms in the last week or so, which have reduced visibility tremendously, and quite frankly can affect equipment if they're not taken care of. And as far as the mobility and the capabilities of these troops while they're wearing these suits, I will tell you that though they are kind of restricted, put those suits on in a matter of seconds, and yet still be able to carry about their work. And that is why these men have been training for as long as they have, for exactly those sort of conditions. Mm-hmm. And the training appears to have been paying off.
Paul, tell me, how vigilantly, how acutely do you look out into the regions of the desert as you're driving along for fear of encountering anything along the way or anything incoming to your region? Or do you feel that you're in a relatively safe location at this point?
Well, without giving away where we are, at the moment, at the present time, the rest of this NBC News team feel relatively safe.
All right. Are you able to see much? What's your vision there? Because we see looks like clouds, a bit of sand. That must be the kind of thing that is drummed up as a result of all that heavy equipment preceding you, right? Or are we looking at any kind of a sandstorm?
It's exactly that. We are on a dirt road. Seeing is being kicked up by the convoy that is moving ahead of us. It is a very bumpy ride. It is a very dusty ride. The visibility is pretty minimal, and but moving at a slow pace, slow but steady pace.
And do you know how many trucks and tanks and that sort of thing are in your specific convoy, or can you give that information away?
I was told that I cannot give that sort of information away, but I will tell you that there's quite a few.
All right, we will respect that, certainly, Paul. Paul, tell me, did you see the evidence of the 3rd Infantry Division when they went by those Iraqi posts that were taken out completely? And if so, can you tell us what that was like? Was there anything remaining to be seen at all?
I cannot discuss that. To be honest with you, Alex, I didn't see anything like that. But I will tell you is that yesterday at around 8 p.m. locally, while we were all stationary, all hell broke loose essentially, and the skies lit up with round after round of howitzers and surface-to-surface missiles, and those of us who looked up to the sky could also see cruise missiles flying above us at a very steady. That is the only real sense of military activity that we have witnessed here, and that was something that lasted for about half an hour yesterday evening between 8 to 8:30 local.
All right, NBC producer Paul Nasser traveling with NBC's David Bloom, as well as the 3rd Infantry Division. Paul, we will let you go right now. We do thank you for the live report. However, everyone, I want to let you know we're going to keep this picture up as you see the 3rd Infantry Division on the move, headed somewhere. We do not specifically know where, nor should we have known the direction would we have informed you for the safety and security of all those there within the 3rd Infantry Division. We are now telling you that we have been getting a number of field reports, though, that elements of the Iraqi army have been surrendering to U.S. troops. We did bring you some video just a short while ago giving evidence of that. Let's go right now to the Pentagon. That is where NBC's Carl Rochelle is standing by with all the latest on these developments this morning for us. Good morning to you, Carl.
Good morning, Alex. Well, I tried to get a handle on some of that, and I am told that the operations are people like David Bloom, and our producer, who is with that U.S. military force moving forward in an area that we can't say where is, are way ahead of the curve on this. In other words, they have information that hasn't made its way back to the official people who will give us word on that yet. And the interesting thing is, I was told by one military official, that's by design. That's why the reporters were embedded with these forces so that they could get the information and get it and report it back in. Otherwise, we wouldn't be hearing this at all. Still not able to confirm the report that the Kirkuk oil fields have been taken over by U.S. forces. It may very well be true. It likely is. Sometimes the first reports are often incorrect, but it sorts itself out. So a lot of this moving forward, moving very rapidly. I noticed with interest the numbers of Iraqis who were surrendering. There was a line of people that was running, it seemed like almost forever down that road. But that is exactly what the U.S. military was trying to do, is to try to get these forces to surrender. Not only by the force of might that went in there, but this is also a product of these leaflets. And the last report I had was over 17 million leaflets that had been dropped in, and many of them were saying do exactly what you see there. Lay down your weapons, surrender, you won't be harmed, you will be okay, we will protect you. And I would suggest to you that one other thing, Alex, is that the fact that no one knows exactly where Saddam Hussein is or whether he is alive may enforce and reinforce the U.S. interest of trying to get these people to cross. The U.S. poses a stronger threat to these people than Saddam Hussein does, Alex.
All right, MSNBC's Carl Rochelle there at the Pentagon. Thank you very much for the live report. We'll check in with you again as well. Let's go right now to CENTCOM. That is located in Qatar. That is where NBC's David Schuster is standing by. David, I understand you have a British official with whom you want to speak right now.
Well, that's right, Alex. We haven't heard from any of the American officials here at CENTCOM, but with us is the spokesperson for British forces. Al Lockwood is a group captain, which is the equivalent in the American forces of a colonel. And first of all, I want to ask you about the big story in Washington right now. A lot of speculation about the status of Saddam Hussein. Does your government believe that Saddam Hussein and his sons are alive or dead?
We have no idea. I certainly don't anyway. But something we'll be very interested to find out.
Well, what would it mean if he was out of action? I mean, how would that change things?
Well, I think we would hope that somebody would realize that the easiest way to stop this would be then to give up the weapons of mass destruction and then attempt to talk to us about how we're going to bring Iraq back into the civilized world again.
Now, Captain Lockwood, I understand that a British tornado was involved in an attack last night on Baghdad. What was the target? What are you hearing as far as how the British forces are being used in that part of Iraq?
Certainly. Our tornadoes took part in a variety of attacks last night against military targets, mainly communication nodes and military buildings, obviously as part of shaping the battle space for future operations.
Now, there was an unfortunate accident overnight involving an American C-Knight 46, a Marine transport helicopter. It was an American crew that was piloting that, and I understand 8 British Marines that were on board. What have you been told by the Americans as far as what happened? Where did it go down? What was the cause?
I think both of us at the moment are uncertain of the cause. We have our accident investigators on the site. It's a tragic loss of life, but I can confirm that it was not through military or enemy action. Sadly, it will take some time before we can completely determine the reason for the crash. but our thoughts at this stage are very much with the families and loved ones of those who've been tragically killed.
I wonder if you can clear up a little bit of the strategic situation in southern Iraq right now. There's been a report that says that that there's a key port that is still, Aqsa, that is still under control of the Iraqis. Is that your understanding? Because that would seem to contradict, I think, something you said earlier as far as coalition forces taking control of a key sort of oil pipeline in that same area. I'm wondering if you can just clear that up.
Certainly. We had elements of 3 Commando Brigade last night go onto the L4 Peninsula, which is the peninsula that controls the straits up to the port, which is our initial objective. They were able to capture both the oil heads that are in the North Arabian Gulf and the pumping station. This has obviously been a concern for us because of the possibility that the regime could have turned the oil on and flooded and polluted the North Arabian Gulf with crude oil. That possibility is now gone. They're in safe hands. The port itself is valuable to us because it's going to be our main focus for bringing humanitarian aid into southern Iraq, and we are determined to get it and establish it as quickly as possible.
Now, anybody who looks at a map of Iraq and hears you say that is going to sense, well, wait a second, Basra has got to be next because it's so close. I mean, our coalition forces, have they surrounded Basra?
Well, obviously, that's up to the general who's running this campaign. He has his objectives, and obviously, it would be a breach of security if I actually discussed how and why he's going to do it.
But British forces clearly are in the lead in this, and I think you said earlier that they were headed towards Basra. Yes,
certainly they're headed toward Basra. They're securing ground, and obviously we need to bypass or actually stop any forces that are opposing it.
Now, Captain Lockwood, tell us a little bit about any fighting in this case in southern Iraq. What sort of opposition have the forces run into? Has there been many skirmishes, much firing at them?
Well, I can only report really on what British forces have encountered so far. We've encountered light resistance. We have some enemy prisoners of war, and I can thankfully say that we've had no casualties on our side.
And finally, your American counterparts here have not had any sort of briefings, anything whatsoever, even off camera. Is that, what do you make of that strategy? I mean, you're out here talking to us, talking to anyone who really wants to talk to a certain degree. What do you make of the disconnect between the British strategy and the American strategy as far as keeping the press informed and keeping people informed about what's going on?
Well, our UK strategy is to be as open and as honest as we can with the facts that are available to us. We like to keep both our audience in the United Kingdom and Europe informed, more importantly, the regional audience here in the Middle East, and also the international audience. That's our policy, and I'm sure our US colleagues will be doing that as quickly as they're able to.
Captain Al Lockwood, thank you very much. He's the spokesperson for British forces. He's a group captain, the equivalent of colonel in U.S. forces. We thank him for joining us on MSNBC. Alex, I'll pitch it back to you.
All right, we thank you for that insight into the British troop movement there into the Iraqi city of Basra. Thanks so much. NBC's David Schuster there at CENTCOM. It is now 1/2 the hour. We have just rounded that time right now, 3:31 here in the morning on the East Coast, everybody. I'm Alex Witt. Here are now the latest headlines in Operation Iraqi Freedom. You're looking at the very latest video into us about 30 uniformed Iraqi soldiers surrendering to U.S. Marines. They are now pushing forward to the outskirts of the key port of Qasr. British troops stormed. They took control of the Al-Faw Peninsula at the head of the Persian Gulf. Back here at home, domestically, the FBI now responding to heightened fears of terrorism related to this war in Iraq. FBI agents have begun questioning Iraqi-born individuals here in the United States. About 11,000 Iraqis are going to be interviewed. The FBI and U.S. Immigration Services are also seeking out specific Iraqis, those living now unlawfully in the United States. And the White House says over 40 nations representing every continent, they are now supporting the American-led war on Iraq, rather. Turkey has granted the U.S. military permission to use its airspace during operations in Iraq, and also heading elsewhere on the globe. The South Korean government has endorsed a plan to send up to 700 non-combat troops to assist the U.S.-led war on Iraq. We are going to recap the latest headlines on the Iraq crisis for you every 15 minutes right here on MSNBC. You can also get the very latest anytime on the web. To do that, just go to iraq.msnbc.com for complete coverage. It has been a very tense 24 hours in Kuwait City. This is troops crossed from Kuwait across the border into Iraq. We are now going to go live to Don Teague. He is in Kuwait City with the very latest for us. And of course, Don, we have been watching the live cameras being provided to us by David Bloom and his producer out of the 3rd Infantry Division. So we know it is true. They are on the move there now from Kuwait into Iraq. What's the latest?
Well, here in Kuwait City, the latest is it's been pretty calm for about the last 2 or 3 hours. We were having quite a few of those air raid sirens that were coming through here, warning of possible missile attacks. They happened yesterday, as we know, and some of those actually did signify missile attacks, but then we had them overnight as well, and we're not sure if there were actually missiles that came with those. And then again, several times today, so it's kept people on their toes, wondering about if something else may be launched this way. But the good news here from the point of view people in Kuwait is that the Patriot missiles have done a pretty good job intercepting what we knew came this way. I can give you a little bit of insight, I think, on the weather situation. We heard that weather may have played some sort of factor in the crash of the CH-46 helicopter. Well, from a pilot's perspective, I can tell you a little bit about what we saw when we woke up this morning. You know, you can see it's sort of gray out there right now. It's a combination of a couple of things. A sandstorm did blow through here earlier in the week, and the air and the visibility never really cleared up from that. On top of that, this morning we woke up to a very low cloud deck, a ceiling that seemed to be less than 1,000 feet, which has a couple of effects. If you're flying out in the desert and you're using night vision goggles, that's limiting the amount of ambient light that's coming in from stars and the moon to help those goggles amplify that light. It also forces you to fly down below that cloud deck. If for whatever reason you wanted to be higher, it puts you down at a little bit lower altitude. And that puts you down with the mix, the dust up that's kicked up by those hundreds and thousands of vehicles that are moving across the border, which create their own sort of sandstorm. So if you're a helicopter flying low level at night in that sort of situation, it can be very tricky and very difficult to navigate. And if you fly into one of these dust storms, almost impossible to see what you're doing. It can be very dangerous.
Don, I was getting some information being brought to me, but I want to capitalize on your own experience as a pilot there. You were with the Marines as well. Tell me how familiar you are, Don, with this CH-46. Is it a difficult chopper to maneuver? Because we know that it has been around since the time of the Vietnam War, so it's an older model, isn't it?
It is, and actually I was an Army helicopter pilot, so I didn't fly the CH-46. I flew generally Hueys, which the Marines still have as well, and are about the same age. You know, they all are aging. It's an aging fleet, and there are problems mechanically from time to time, but over the years they do everything they can to modernize and upgrade the aircraft, so it's not like sitting in a 30-year-old car, for example, to the same extent that it is with an older aircraft. They all typically have their different limitations as far as flying, but the reality is it's a maneuverable aircraft. It can auto-rotate. It can safely land if it has an engine failure or other problems that you would encounter in a helicopter. But the real danger, again, and I'm not speculating as to what caused this crash because they haven't told us what they think caused this crash, but one of the constant dangers when you're flying over desert terrain and low level, which in the military you do right down on the deck at times, is what they call inadvertent IMC. It's when you go from flying in a visual mode, looking at the terrain, looking at what you're flying into, to suddenly everything disappears. You've flown into a fog bank, you've flown into the clouds, you've flown into a dust storm. And that transition from using your eyes and seeing where you are to trying to get on your instruments and climb up out of that mess so you can get safely away from the ground is a very, very tricky transition. It's something that pilots brief for before every mission, exactly what you're going to do if you go inadvertent IMC, but it's still very dangerous, and it does, across the military, cause a lot of problems with helicopters flying down at those low levels.
And Don, I stand corrected. I'm glad you clarified for us that you were part of the Army with your experience there as a chopper pilot flying Hueys rather than the CH-46s of the Marines. But very quickly, Don, you speak as if you had had some experiences yourself with difficulty flying those choppers. Did you ever have any close calls, any difficult flights that you were commanding?
Well, I happened to be on an aircraft once that the one engine that we have in an Army Huey failed. And you get to practice for real, or do for real, the auto rotation that you practice over and over for training. You know, we survived that okay. It's something that pilots know is something that can happen. You know, you have mechanical problems over the years, and you just hope you're ready to respond and that you can respond, because frankly, there are situations you can be in where had the same thing happened and let's say you're over mountains, you don't have the same options available to you to where you're going to put that thing down when you're auto-rotating as if you're over a flat desert or if you're over the water. So part of it's just luck that mixes in there with all of that training you receive.
All right, Don Teague of NBC News and formerly of the Army as a chopper pilot yourself, we do appreciate your keen insights on both those fronts. Thanks, Don. Well, we're going to bring up a live picture right now of downtown Baghdad for you, where it is rapidly approaching what many would say would be the lunchtime hour. It is approaching noon there right now, as you see, specifically 11:38 a.m. local time there in Baghdad. It is a very clear day, no evidence of any kind of sandstorms, as had been the case earlier, certainly in Kuwait City, but Baghdad seems very free of that at the moment. You see some traffic, probably not the likes of which you would see on a normal day, where Baghdad not to be under the kind of situation it is right now. But again, as we take from this live picture in Baghdad, we want to talk about senior government sources telling NBC News this morning that emergency medical personnel there were sent to the bunker inside Baghdad that was hit by the U.S. and coalition forces yesterday. And they say it is believed that Saddam Hussein, as well as members of his family and some senior Iraqi military leaders, were in that bunker when it was hit. My colleague Lester Holt spoke to Dana Priest from the Washington Post about a story they broke on whether Saddam Hussein is dead or alive.
24 hours after the strike, they are listening and looking at the target, and they do believe that he was still in the bunker by the time the missiles arrived. There are some people who believe that he and his sons were injured, and then others are still leaving open the possibility that he escaped. But the big news is that he was still there, because it took a lot of time to make the decision, and then, of course, time for the hours for the missiles and bombs to reach their targets. And they do believe that he was still in their bunker.
And is that basically an assessment of the level of the quality of the intelligence they received?
Absolutely. You can't expect to get that sort of thing without some type of human intelligence somewhere near the target, and without technical means that can help you after the bombs have dropped, listen to the communications that are going on, and also, of course, using satellite and other sort of imagery to see if there's any movement going on.
Dana, this was described as a private residence. Do we know if it had the features of a bunker, or was it simply a house?
Yeah, it wasn't exactly a private residence. It was a compound guarded by his special bodyguards. It was a military quasi-residence compound that had a lot of room in it, and it did have a bunker. We know that he was in the bunker having a meeting at the time the strike happened. Now, just think, they knew that. So if they knew that, they have very good intelligence, which is eventually, they hope, going to lead them to definitively conclude that he's either dead or alive.
Well, we know from the Pentagon to the White House, they were being very tight-lipped about what their speculation was. Is there cautious optimism that he's out of the game, that regime change has in fact taken place?
Well, that would be such a big decision and such a big conclusion that they really want to make extra certain that they're correct. After all, this is the goal of the whole military operation, and the CIA has been planning over a year and executing these types of arrangements where they would hope to get him out of the picture before the war even started. They planned that they would use one last attempt to get him before the war started, and we think that this is it.
And walk me through again what they're saying, what you're reporting with regard to the tape, that was recorded days in advance?
Several days ago, they have evidence, and they won't describe exactly what that is, but they say they know that he made several tapes. He has a habit of making tapes for this purpose, but he's made several different tapes, and interestingly enough, they each use different dates, March 20th, March 21st, because he, like everybody else, was seeing that clock tick, knowing that the deadline for action was coming close, and so cleverly trying to incorporate that into the statements that he was making.
And that was part of an earlier conversation with my colleague Lester Holt and the Washington Post's Dana Priest. Well, sadly, as we've been reporting, we have received reports of the first military casualties of war. A C-9 Marine helicopter crashed south of the Iraqi border, killing 4 Americans, as well as, now we're told, 8 Britons on board. I'm joined tonight once again in our war room by Dan Garay, Vice President with the Lexington Institute, a nonprofit public policy research organization. Dan was also a former Defense Department official during the Persian Gulf War. Joining him, retired Marine Major Jack Stradley, who mobilized a detachment from the unit for service in Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm. Gentlemen, you come well credentialed. I'm especially glad to have you here. Let's talk first about that which they were talking about, Lester and Dana's conversation there about Saddam Hussein in the bunkers and whether or not Saddam Hussein may be dead or alive. Your feeling here, first to you, Dan, do you believe it's the kind of thing that he could have used a double in that speech that was put out there, something that was taped in advance of the onslaught, the military onslaught on Baghdad?
Either or both. One of the things we've seen, for example, with Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden is the value of these tapes that can be put out after the fact, or the individual moves on, so he's not a target, something goes out on tape. This may have been something that Saddam, in a sense, has learned from that situation. The tape goes out, the tape is prepared, the tape is available anywhere you want to beam it from, but he's in some other place entirely. And
does Saddam have a history of using his body doubles to do addresses to the nation?
No, that's the one thing that's quite interesting, is that by all accounts, the body doubles are there just for show. They don't speak. They don't make declarations, they don't make speeches, they're really just physical doubles.
All right. And Major, with regard to the attack specifically on that unit, I mean, particularly on that building, these were the Tomahawk missiles as well as the bunker busters. Can anything survive a bunker buster when it goes down deep?
Well, there's no absolutes in warfare. Yes, someone could survive. You can't ever tell, but there's a tremendous amount of firepower. Very likely that there were casualties, and possibly we got him. Possibly we got lucky.
You know, Alex, there was one bunker we attacked in Baghdad during the last war. We didn't get all the way through, but the first level underground was a large number of civilians. They were all wiped out. So this must have been an awfully deep, awfully heavy facility to withstand two such bombs.
All right, Dan and Major, I'm going to ask you to stand by just a minute. As promised, everyone, we're going to bring you the latest headlines. I'm Alex Witt. It is now 45 past the hour of 3 o'clock in the morning here on the East Coast. These headlines now in Operation Iraqi Freedom for you. British Defense Secretary Jeff Hoon says up to 30 oil wells were set on fire. It is a figure that is less truly than was feared. Intelligence officials are saying now that oil fields in Kirkuk, they are the busiest in Iraq, by the way, they have now been secured by U.S. forces. Also, U.S. military rescue and investigation teams now on the scene of that downed CH-46 helicopter, and the Marine helicopter was carrying 4 Americans as well as 8 Britons. There are no survivors as a result of that crash, but officials are saying hostile fire was not involved in the incident. There is evidence that Saddam may have been injured. Intelligence sources are saying that emergency medical personnel were sent to the bunker after it was hit on Wednesday night. Intelligence officials believe that Saddam, as well as family members, notably 2 of his sons perhaps, were as well as other Iraqi leaders, were still in the bunker at the time of that strike. We are recapping the latest headlines on the Iraqi crisis for you every 15 minutes right here on MSNBC. You can also get the very latest anytime on the web. To do that, just go to iraq.msnbc.com for the complete coverage. All right, back now to our war room coverage here with the Major and with Dan Garay as well. Let's go now to the accident itself. We've just covered the bases with the bunker buster bombs there, and if Saddam Hussein may be dead or alive, and your thoughts on that, gentlemen. But I want to ask you first, Major, it does appear that this was just an accident, correct? Nothing along the result of hostile fire?
Right, those are the reports that we're getting, that it was some type of aircraft accident, could have been caused by any number of things, mechanical failure, pilot error, weather, or probably a combination of all those things.
But Dan, this helicopter, this is an older model helicopter, this one. We know that it was first put up to use back in 1964, so presumably used throughout the Vietnam War. Is it the kind of thing that has been upgraded sufficiently, so it's really a changed vehicle at this point?
Well, not within its overall configuration. I mean, there are improvements, and they try to make sure that it doesn't have any kind of really catastrophic vulnerability. So they'll replace the engines, they'll replace the rotor blades, they will update the avionics, provide night vision equipment, all of that. Fundamentally, though, it is an obsolescent bird that needs to be replaced, probably with something like the V-22 at some point.
And Major, I understand that you're a former pilot yourself, and you've had a crash similar to the one that we're getting word of here, the CH-46. You lost friends and fellow service people, didn't you?
Well, I'm a private pilot, but also as an infantry officer, I did have a helicopter go down on an operation I was involved in, and unfortunately lost a couple of troops, and some also survived but were severely injured. So it's unfortunate, even in peacetime, there are accidents. There are helicopter crashes. They happen. They're mechanical machines that occasionally fail.
And it's interesting because occasionally when you have a war, you see that it's this type of incident that can really take out a large number of your troops, isn't it? It's not always as a result of the hostile enemy fire and the like and attacks.
Sure, the fog and friction of war, there are a lot of contributing factors, and it's not always the enemy. We're fighting everything, weather, terrain, the unknown, all those kinds of things, bad luck. All of those things play a factor.
And do you believe that weather was a factor here? Do we know the reports? Was there a sandstorm or anything along the like going on?
From what I know, the weather moved in, the ceiling came down a little bit, and in my estimation, from the limited information that I do have, it was probably a contributing factor anyway.
So meaning fog, you think?
Fog or low ceiling or sand. If you're flying, looking outside of the cockpit, and you lose the horizon, it becomes very difficult to differentiate between sky and ground, and it's possible he just lost his orientation, was spatially disoriented.
We have reported that on board that chopper, Dan, in addition to the 4 U.S. servicemen that were killed, 8 Britons. Let's talk about this from a diplomatic standpoint. It can't be too helpful to Tony Blair's case for supporting the U.S.-led coalition back in Britain right now.
No, I don't think it's going to make a difference. What we found is that Tony Blair has an absolute will of steel, truly a great man in this situation. He knows, the British people know that there are going to be casualties. The Parliament actually backed him up 2-1, which was quite impressive in a way. If there's going to be large-scale casualties, or if there's going to be some catastrophic casualties, an entire unit wiped out. But, you know, this is truly the cost of doing business, the cost of this war, and I think they're prepared for it.
I also want to have us play the video that we've just gotten into us of Iraqi troops surrendering. I want to talk with you both about the diplomacy from this point onward. Dan, I'll begin with you. When you have the surrendering of troops, what happens next? Once they've been secured and know not to bear any sort of arms?
Well, then you have to essentially find, you're responsible for them, so you have to find some place to put them. Over the period of a day to days, you have to feed, you have to provide basic shelter. If they need medical care, you're going to have to provide that. That becomes a responsibility under the Geneva Convention laws of war.
All right, so Major, let's look at these pictures with our viewers, and it would appear that they are surrendering along the roads. It could mean that these U.S. troops here are on the move themselves. So how cumbersome is it to take along those who have defected or surrendered along the way with them?
Well, it could be cumbersome, but this is something that U.S. forces were prepared for. There are special units, military police and whatnot, that are tasked with handling those prisoners of war. They're following procedures. There's camps set up. And the logistics that Dan talked about, the feeding them, the clothing them, sheltering them, medical, is all in place. So it's the transition from accepting the surrender and putting them into captivity that's the most critical point. Once they're in captivity, then it's fairly easy, and they're prepared to deal with that.
Now, we do not know to whom these troops in this video surrendered, but let's say it were members of the 3rd Infantry Division, whom we know to be on the move from Kuwait across the border now into southern Iraq. Again, they're on the move. They are doing military operations right now. So if they're surrendering to them, bottom line, do they not want to encounter those who want to surrender as they're on the way to launch some sort of military assault, Dan?
Well, it's rather hard for them not to. I mean, essentially, you've got the Iraqis heading south to surrender and the 3rd Division heading north to do its business. What you'd like to do is essentially pass them on. The frontline units keep on moving as fast as they can. The rear units move up. The military police, as Jack said, take over and then send these people south, essentially almost like a convoying them south while the forces move north. What you don't want to do, though, is have so many of them surrender on that road, have the road closed with refugees or prisoners that you can't move up your resupply units, your rear units, because the roads are blocked.
Yeah, we're being told that the numbers in the video you're seeing right here amount to about 30 surrenders right there, which is something that could be taken along. That's easily managed. Yeah. All right, and very quickly, Major, if these are members of the Iraqi 11th Infantry Division, this is good news in terms of the reports that indeed they are surrendering?
Sure, if that's what we're seeing, that's great news. The 11th Infantry Division or the 11th Division is 1/3 of the forces that we expected to encounter in southern Iraq. And so if that unit en masse is surrendering, it's great news.
All right, Major Stradley, Dan Gray, thank you so much, gentlemen. Appreciate your insights as always. U.S. troops have made their way into the southern Iraqi desert. They are now headed north, and NBC's Kerry Sanders is embedded with American forces in Iraq. He is with the 8th Marine Division. He filed this report.
The Marines have suited up this morning, and they've put on what they call their mop gear. As a matter of fact, in a short period of time, a deadline's going to approach, and we also have to do the same. That is the charcoal-lined suit that is designed as protection against chemical and biological agents in the event that there is an attack. There were at least 3 incidents yesterday when the 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines were moving where they had to at least don their gas masks. They did this as they were traveling in some rather dusty and particularly hot conditions, which made it, for myself, extremely uncomfortable.
What's that?
I can tell you that the masks, when you put them on, initially begin to cause your face to sweat quite a bit. So it was quite an ordeal. In all 3 cases yesterday, it was information that was bogus, as it were. They were just relying on the preventative approach to this. On the side of the trucks, they actually have equipment that tests and smells the air to see if there is any sort of chemical or biological agent, a sniffer, as it were. What I'm going to try to do here is I'm going to try and just give you a small picture. As much as I can't tell you where I am, I can try to provide you a little bit of a picture of what you can see out here. So let me just step out of the picture for a moment, okay? And I'm going to let you look past us just here for a moment. And you can see here, this is one of the command tents that's been set up. These can be set up in about 5 to 10 minutes in the field here by the Marines. And as we come back over this way, you can see some of the other elements that are also here. I'm going to also provide you a picture, if I can, and I'm sorry this is taking a little bit difficult, but we're going to sort of bring the camera all the way around here if we can. And we're in sort of a tight condition here. And I want to show you, this is what they call the cat patrol. That's the folks who go out sort of as the screen in front of moving troops. And what you see right there are tow missiles on top of Humvees. And you can see that they're camouflaged. They've hardened the floors with sandbags. And the patrol that goes out would, if they move in a direction, would be right out there in front. It would sort of be the blockers on a football team, as it were. And you can see some of the units here. And again, you see everybody in their chemical, biological suits this morning. Now, we do have some news to report. There is apparently a battle for the Ramallah oil fields. We understand that at least 2 of the oil fields are on fire. I can report that we did see a glow that appeared to be those Ramallah oil fields at one point yesterday. There is also a report of a Black Hawk helicopter that is down. We do not have any information of known casualties or not. And finally, we can tell you that hiding in amongst the scrap yards of the old tanks that were dumped and left in the desert after the first Gulf War 12 years ago are T-72 tanks. The Iraqi military apparently has moved some of those tanks from their present-day military in to hide in amongst there. We know at least 1 T-72 tank has been taken out when it was firing.
And that was NBC's Carrie Sanders reporting there for you. Well, the first strikes of Operation Iraqi Freedom have been less than the overwhelming display promised by the Pentagon. Dateline NBC's Victoria Corderi with this look at the shock and awe war plan.
It will be of a force and scope and scale that has been beyond what has been seen before.
Shock and awe is designed to stun the opposition into submission, first by psychological propaganda, then by an overwhelming and precise use of force, striking multiple strategic targets, disrupting communication and command centers, and creating confusion and fear.
What you do is through the simultaneous effort, so intimidate, so overwhelm the adversary, they look around and say, oh my God, there's better things to do than fight a war.
Harlan Ullman helped conceive the strategy and coin the term shock and awe. He says no one from the administration has consulted him directly, but the former naval officer once taught Secretary of State Colin Powell at the National War College. And he says Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld was briefly part of the group that formulated the strategy a decade ago. Ullman says yesterday's surprise attack on Hussein, while not massive in scope, fits neatly into this philosophy developed by others long ago. The goal is to decapitate the enemy.
How did this concept originate?
Well, actually, the roots of this concept go back to China several thousand years ago when Sun Tzu, the famous military philosopher, wrote that the best way to win a battle is to win it without fighting it.
Ullman says the ultimate example of shock and awe was the dropping of the atomic bomb during World War II.
2 nuclear weapons, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, caused the Japanese to quit. Now, that was shock and awe, and every time I use that analogy, people say, well, you're going to destroy Baghdad. No. That's not what we want to do. What you're trying to do, in essence, is to get an enemy who was suicidal in the extreme to quit. That's shock and awe.
Still, Ullman admits much could go wrong. Some of the new high-tech weapons are untested in battle. There could be serious collateral damage, destruction and loss of innocent life.
Couldn't part of that collateral damage also be unwittingly hitting chemical or biological weapons?
Sure, and that was a problem in 1991. But I think we're going to be very sensitive to what we aim for if we think it's WMD, weapons of mass destruction.
But we don't even know where they are.
Well, I don't know. I hope we do.
Despite the risks, Ullman says shock and awe is far better than search and destroy, and may end up saving many more lives on both sides of this conflict.
And we just hope that by doing it this way, that the Iraqi military and political leadership will understand the desperate situation they're in and do the smart thing, which is surrender. But at this stage, who knows? One hopes.
And that was Dateline NBC's Victoria Cordero reporting. Let's bring up a live picture right now of downtown Baghdad, where it rapidly approaches the noon hour. It is nearly noon there on a Friday, certainly not the bustling midday activity one would expect to see. But again, Baghdad is under a heightened state of alert, of course, with the U.S. military on rapid approach. Speaking of Baghdad, we want to recap for you that which we know regarding the attacks yesterday now, or earlier in the morning, on the bunker in which Saddam Hussein is believed to have been with his two sons by his side, as well as Iraqi military leaders. We do not know whether Saddam Hussein has been injured or whether or not he is dead or alive. There have been pictures of Saddam Hussein addressing the public. It could be that that was a body double, although, as you heard our military analyst Dan Garay saying prior during a War Room segment moments ago, that that has not ever been known to be the case with Saddam Hussein, but he did not look well, the person who was in that video. There are those who believe it could have been a body double, having had Saddam Hussein tape some messages that he would deliver to his people in advance of knowing a military onslaught could be forthcoming. In addition, we're getting reports that there are oil fields in Kirkuk that have been secured. We want to pass off the baton now to MSNBC's Chris Jansen, who picks up our coverage from here. I'm Alex Witt. Thanks for joining me the last couple hours. Now over to you, Chris.
Dramatic pictures out of Iraq, the first visible signs that the Iraqi military just might not fight for Saddam. Good morning, I'm Chris Jansen. It is the top of the hour, 4 a.m. here on the East Coast, 1 a.m. on the West, and British troops appear to be facing some resistance as they push north. British Defense Minister Jeff Hoon says British forces have secured the Faw Peninsula, but are facing opposition at Qasr as they press north toward the Iraqi port of Basra. The Associated Press reports that 200 Iraqi soldiers have now surrendered to U.S. Marines. Secretary Donald Rumsfeld confirming on Thursday that the U.S. has been in touch with Iraqi forces, including members of Saddam's elite Republican Guard, over how to surrender without a fight. Pentagon officials say no hostile fire involved in the crash of a U.S. Marine helicopter like this one. It is a CH